So thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Today I want to tell you about consumer perceptions of sustainable packages versus the real effects of packages. But first, still two slides about Paulig. So we are an international family-owned food and beverage company offering sustainable taste experiences. And we have been around almost 150 years. And here you can see our brands on the tree. And as examples of our products, we offer tasty plant-based alternatives and proteins. And our coffee is 100% sustainability verified. And we also constantly develop environmentally friendly packages. I have more than 2,000 colleagues and we work in 13 countries. We have a revenue last year 921 million euros, and next year we actually aim for 1 billion euros. So we have had a steady growth and we still plan for steady growth. And here you also can see our business areas. So Finland and Baltics, about 1/3, Scandinavia, Central Europe, 30%. Then customer brands are also important for us. And East here means Russia. So as a fast-moving consumer goods company, listening to the consumer is, of course, very important for us, as for all other brand companies too. In all of our functions, we aim to listen to the consumers. And I've been told that customers and consumers are always right. So is that right? Well, I think yes and no, which actually leads to the topics of my presentation. So first, few words about environmental effects of packages from the consumer perception point of view and research point of view. Then packages and waste, environmental effects of various materials, littering, terminology, and then as a conclusion from all these topics, few words about our sustainability work and our ambition for 2030. So first, environmental effects of packages. When we look at the share of an average European consumer, the share of the food and beverage and tobacco products for the carbon footprint is about 1/3. So of course, when we can lower that, it's significant effect. And then what's the share of the packages? Consumers often think that the share of packages is the highest share of the foods. But well, as an example, I have here figures of Paulig coffee chain. And as you can see, the highest share for the carbon footprint is the coffee farming and processing. Less than 4% comes from transportation, roasting, and packaging, the share of packaging being 1 to 2%. And actually, consumers have quite big effect on the carbon footprint in the coffee chain. So how much or how long they keep the coffee machine warm, how much they make the coffee and maybe pour something away, not drinking it. So actually, consumers can affect quite much on the carbon footprint in our coffee chain. Well, I think that many of us know that the carbon footprint of food packages is low compared to the food itself. But even if we take other indicators into account, like here in this study, eutrophication, ozone layer, acidification, and primary energy, in addition to the climate change. So even here, the share of the packages is very, very small, few percentages. And this is example of marinated broiler, but it's a good example of foods in average and drinks. The exception being drinks that themselves have small carbon footprint. Well, then what about packages and waste? We all know that there has been increased debate and news about packaging waste all over the world last years. And I picked up here one example of an Austrian news, which shows well the perception that consumers and media have had. So here it says that packages of plastic wrapping has nothing to do with freshness, and packages actually just make you buy more than what you want. And when we look at the Google searches of plastic pollution and zero waste, we can see that there is a clear correlation. The peak in the 2018 is from the World Environment Day, when plastic packages were the theme of that day. So yes, there is a clear correlation. So one could think that decreasing plastic would decrease waste. However, that's not the case. On the contrary. I hope that many of you are familiar with this study already before. So here we can see that when cucumbers were wrapped in plastic, this green bar, compared to cucumbers without any packaging, this blue bar. So the total greenhouse gas emissions were much, much smaller with the cucumbers wrapped in plastic. And that's because much more waste from the cucumbers were created without any packaging. And when we look at the household food waste, that actually has much, much higher effect on the carbon footprint than packages. So this is a study where bread packed in polypropylene bags, polyethylene bags, and paper bags were compared to find out if there was any difference on the carbon footprint. And you can see here the blue part of the bar is the effect of packages. So actually no difference between the different bag types. But what really makes the difference is the red part, which is the household product loss. So when consumers throw half a slice or one slice bread away, that has a huge impact on the carbon footprint created by the bread. So yes, food waste is a huge global problem. And if it were a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter. And of course, one could argue that, okay, well, food waste we can always use, for example, feeding animals. But it has been studied that preventing food waste is much more beneficial than food waste management. However, I think that attitudes and perceptions have already started to change, and already before COVID-19. So last year, Frankfurter Allgemeine wrote how good plastic can be. And at the beginning of this year, BBC reported that plastic packaging ban could actually harm the environment. And last month, Food Navigator wrote that we should focus when designing packages, focus so that less food waste is created, since the food waste has much bigger impact on the climate. And that an NGO project suggested that reducing food waste is 15.7 times more important to cutting our carbon footprint than, for example, recycling. But yeah, as written here on the side of the Finnish truck collecting sorted waste, it's easy to modify tin can to a fork, but it's much more difficult to change people's mindset. So I think that it really takes time to change these attitudes and perceptions. But as a brand owner, I think we must do that, and we must tell consumers about the real facts. So when we look at the consumer perceptions, this is a Finnish study made this year about various packaging materials. The 3 bars here on the right are bio-based plastic, carton board, and paper. And we can see that these materials are seen as modern, natural, safe, and environmentally friendly among consumers. When we compare the results to a European packaging preferences study made by 2 sites this year, well, they are quite the same. So here, paper and cardboard packages were ranked highest with consumers for sustainability. Well, then what is the truth from the research point of view? Well, it depends actually on the indicator used. So this is a study made by IFEU for ready-to-drinks packages. And we can see that if we look at the climate change, glass is the worst material. But if we look at the water usage, glass is the best material. So there are often no black and white answers in the packaging sustainability area. And that's of course not that easy to explain to consumers. That on the other hand, things might look this, but on the other hand, they might look another way. And when we look at the plastic, especially, I think it has 3 challenges. First is the fossil raw materials, which means usually high carbon footprint. And I think that the answer is not to get rid of plastic where we really need plastic or plastic type materials, but the answer is to change to renewable or recycled raw materials. The other challenge is recyclability. One part of the answer is to develop recyclable packaging structures, but that's just one part. So we also need collection of packages, sorting industrially the packages, so the consumers might do the kind of rough sorting, but we still need industrial sorting to verify good raw material. We do need good recycling processes for that certain material, and then we need end market application and somebody who wants to buy the recycled material granulates. So consumers often think that when they just put the package to these bins, they are recycled, but actually that's not really the case. The third problem, littering. Well, I think it's not really plastic specific problem, but it concerns all materials. And there the answer is infrastructure and education. Then multi-layer plastic laminates. Well, they are the most challenging from the recycling point of view. And of course, we could already replace them already today with other materials. But if we would pack for example, 250 grams coffee in an aluminum can. And let's think that it would have 80% recycling rate, which is already quite high. So then the material waste per package would be 22 grams. And when we compare it to the bag that we use today, it's a plastic laminate, and let's consider it would have 0% recycling rate. So then the material waste per one package would be 12 grams. So then again, what's good and what's bad solution? It's not that simple. Few more words about littering and recycling. When consumers are asked about the actions they are willing to take for environmental reasons, recycling the packages is mentioned here most often. And actually, I would like to use word sorting because consumers are not recycling. But yes, sorting is much more easier for consumers than, for example, using less their car or some other actions that require more effort. However, recycling is, recycling is not that simple, so education still is needed. Well, over half of the consumers say that they are very consistent with sorting, but some still think that they are not that consistent or only somewhat consistent. And why is that? Well, almost half of the consumers say that it's just too much effort required. 1/3 says that they do not understand the recycling program very well, which means that we as a brand owner, we must make clearer sorting instructions to the packages. And then, well, 30% of the consumers blame the other members of the household. And this slide nicely describes how there is a sorting system for many plastics. However, there is not that many processing for those plastics, and then even less markets for the plastics. So definitely we also need to work with markets and processing and sorting when we talk about increasing recycling of packages. Then a few words more about terminology. So yes, there is even confusion over what is plastic. So for example, there are plastic-free aisles on the stores where still cellulose-based plastic is allowed. And then there are like plastic-free shops where still plastic reusable containers are used. So consumers are sometimes really confused about the terminology, and it has been studied that when consumers see the word biodegradable on a package, 80% think that the package will completely decompose regardless of the environment in which they are disposed, which is really a shame. And here you can see the results. And it has also been studied that consumers are more likely to litter when an item is marked as being biodegradable. But not only consumers, also experts, politicians, and media are sometimes very confused. So this new single plastic directive has created a lot of confusion about compostability, about what is plastic packaging. There are questions about new techniques like chemical recycling. Is that a solution? Is that a good solution? How efficient solution? How expensive solution that is? And yes, then we do not even have a definition for what is recyclable packaging. So a lot of confusions, a lot of open questions. So what is Paulig solution and ambition? Well, first, we concentrate our main development on our products, sourcing from high-risk areas, and our own processes, because we see that there we can do the biggest effects. We also do have a target for packages. And these sustainability targets for 2030, they are ambitious. And our goals are based on UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we are proud to say that we are among the frontrunner companies globally that have science-based climate targets approved by the Science Based Target Initiative. So then let's look at more closely to the packaging target. So all Paulig packages will be recyclable and will be made from renewable or recycled materials by 2030. Last years, we have been especially concentrating on this first part, recycled or renewable packages. So we've introduced increased renewable share to our packaging materials. We have introduced recycled materials where it's possible. But now for the coming years, we will concentrate on this part, so recyclability. And there we have already recognized many challenges to be solved and decisions to be made. So we do have many customers that have various promises and various targets. Then we do have our own portfolio with many categories, many different packaging lines. And then there are also many different guidelines for recyclability. There are national guidelines, and then, for example, CFLEX guidelines. But, well, these, for example, CFLEX, it doesn't have any official status. And it's really challenging to find the right balance between the various ambitious targets, especially from our customers, and then all the restrictions by the packaging lines, and then the confusion of the guidelines. So I'd really be happy to spar with other brand owners and with all of our customers about these challenges. We have had very good discussions already, but it would be nice to have even more. So please be in touch if you want to spar with us too. So now I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for questions and comments, if any. Thank you.